Today's daf is daf Mem Vav, and we'll begin from the second line. Amar Rabbi Elazar Mishum Bar Kapara. The Gemara is now analyzing the Shita of Rabbi Meir. The Meir holds that every day they had a fourth marocha on the Mizbeach. That was a separate marocha, a separate pyre for the Evarim Updarim, those limbs and parts of the animal, shalos aklu balayla, that had not been consumed the night before. So they would be put on the separate maracha the following morning. Omer Hoyer Rabbi Meir, Evre Ola Shenisosru, if there are Evarim and Pidarim, different limbs of the Ola Karban of yesterday, that were left until the morning following the day of its hakrava, osim lahem maroch b'fnei atzmo. We set up a pyre on the mizbeach, a separate pyre, v'sojin oleha, and we will place these every ola shenis shalonis aklu shenis osru on top of this pyre. And so far, Rabbi Elazar in the name Bar Kapar is just simply reiterating what we know from our Mishnah, but then he adds two words, Vafilu b'Shabbos, that they would set up a separate marocha to burn these Evarim, the Karbonos, of the Tamid of Erev Shabbos, of a Friday Tamid, that was left over till Shabbos in the morning, and the Hakrava of these Evarim will override the Shabbos. And even though the Torah says Lo Savaru H Bechol Moshvosechem, but nevertheless the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Chav darshans from the word Moshvosechem that Rak Bechol Moshvosechem Nesra Avaras H B'Shabbos Aval Bebeis Hamigdash Mutter Lahavir H B'Shabbos. The pasuk is coming to be Memayit Shabbos as far as Beis Hamigdash is concerned. That in the Beis Hamigdash you're allowed to burn the fires. And this is teaching us that even the Evarim of the Ptarim, of those Karbanos of Erev Shabbos, so the Zrikas Hadam was on Erev Shabbos, nevertheless you could be Makriv, the Evarim and the Ptarim on Shabbos itself. And this drasha that Hakrovas Evarim is permissible, is permitted on Shabbos, these are Evarim Shenechsa Bahem Eish Hamarocha Kodem Shabbos. They were placed on the Mizbeach before Shabbos, and the fire started consuming them, and did not completely consume them. And were allowed to complete the process of burning these Evarim on Shabbos itself. So the Gemara now asks the following, Maika Mashmon. The Gemara is now analyzing the first part of Bar Kapara's statement, namely that Osim Maracha b'fnei for the Evrei Ola Sheni Sosru. Nina, that's exactly what we learned in the Mishnah back on Daf Mem Gimel. Quote, Bechol Yom Hayusham Arba Marachas Divrei Rabbi Meir. There were 4 different fires on the Mizbech. One of those 4 fires was a Maracha, as the Gemara in the Brisa on the previous Daf, on Daf Mem Hey, quoting that Brisa, that this is the Maracha that they specified for the purpose of Evarim Shalonis Aklu Balayla. So whatever Evarim did not get completely consumed at night, there was a separate Maroch on the Mizbeach. So why are you simply repeating what it says in the Mishnah? Amrabi Avin lo nitzacha ella lipsulin. The Chiddush here, above and beyond the Mishnah of Bar Kapara in the framework of Rabbi Meir, is to teach us that even a Evarim Psulim, again, there's a whole sugya in Zvachim to determine which Psul, but certain Psulim in any event, that we are not usually makriv those Evarim Psulim, but we have a principle that im olu lo yerdu, that if they were already placed on the Mizbeach, then we go ahead and we makriv them. So if these Evarim, which are Psulim, did not get completely consumed, then we're going to make a separate maracha for them, bifnei atzma, in order to burn them. And even though generally speaking, we don't burn Kodshim Psulim, but in this case, because Olu, they're already on top of the Mizbeach, therefore we're going to be makriv them in a separate Maroch B'fnei Atzma. We're not going to say that if these Eivarim that were Psulim were extended, meaning they did not get consumed until the morning, and now we have the following morning. So we're going to say, well, this Aver does not have the din of an Aver to create a Maroch B'nei Atzma, and we should just simply be makriv and on the Maroch Gedol with all the other korbanos. So comes along Rabbi Oven in the name of Bar Kapara, and in interpreting Bar Kapara, and he says that this din, that with regard to Eivar Psulim, we set up a separate Marocha, that's Dafka Kishe Mashla Behen Ha'ur, that the Mizbeach already, the fire on the Mizbeach already caught fire, Nechsaba, and that makes it into what's called Lachmo Shel Mizbeach. The Mizbeach has already, so to speak, been kolet. It now, so to speak, possesses this lechem, meaning this aver, and it's already shaykh to the mizbeach. It's in the domain or the possession of the mizbeach, and therefore it's considered and has the same status as a varim sherim. Avalo mashal ben ha'ur, says Rabbi Oven, if during the course of the night the fire has not begun to consume, to take hold of these Eivarim, then we're not going to set up a Marocha B'fnei Atzma, but rather we'll organize them on the Marocha Gedol. And this is as far as Psulim is concerned. And Eivarim Ksherim, then that has a different halach. Now, as far as ksherim are concerned, then halacha is that if there is a varim shenisosru that were left over from ksherim, then we don't set up a special marocha. Again, even if the eish was not ochez, it didn't take hold of them, then we burn the ksherim on the Marocha Gedol, together with all the other korbanos. Ika di Amri, the Gemara now has a different version of Rabbi Oven. Echad ksherim the echad psulim imashla behen ha'ur, in that once the nechsa bahem eish mizbeach, the fire got a hold of them, and we consider it lachmo shel mizbeach, then even in the case of a varim ksherim, we will burn them on a separate marocha b'fnei atzma when they are left over till the morning, meaning that the fire has not completely consumed them. But the lo, if it was not nechsa b'hen ha'esh balayla, then lo, we don't set them up on a separate marocha, but rather we put them together with all the korbanos on the marocha gedola, and that applies even to Eivarim Ksherim. We're not going to create for them a marocha b'fnei atzma, unless it was nechsa ben ha'esh. And if it was nechsa ben ha'esh and the fire already took hold of them, then we will burn even a varim ksherim on a marocha b'fnei atzma, a separate marocha that, according to Rabbi Meir, is the fourth marocha on the mizbeach. So that initially, the Gemara had a problem with the first part of Ben Kappar's statement that on every day they set up a separate marocha for Eivarim shenosru. And ultimately, the Gemara says, as we'll soon see, that there's a chiddush here in Bar Kapara, even with regard to the Seifa of his words, meaning to be Docha Shabbos. Now, let me just add this note over here. He says that Leloshan Rishona, according to the first version of Rabbi Ovin, Evar Psulim Shenosru Ishalo Sholta Ben Aish Makrino Sal Marocha Gedola Ein Osem Ben Maroch B'fnei Loshan Shnia Af Evar Sherim Shenosru Kishalo Sholta Ben Aish Makrivino Son Al Hamarocha HaGidol. The Afilu B'Shabbos. Now the Gemara analyzes the Seifa of Bar Kappar's statement that with regard to the Shita Rabbi Meir, when we set up a Marocha unto itself for every Ola Shenosru, Afilu B'Shabbos. Even on the Shabbos, we're going to burn these Evarim. So the Gemara once again says, Tnina, why do I need Bar Kappar to add this? We already have this in the Mishnah. Mishnah back on Daf Mem Gimel and Beis says that on a daily basis, there were 4 marachos. V'hayom, and on Yom Kippur there were 5 marachos. Now, one of the 5 marachos was the maracha that was designated for a Varim Shalom Nisaklu. And we're talking about Yom Kippur because he's talking about 5 marachos on Yom Kippur. Now, Yom Kippur has the same din at Shabbos in terms of malacha. So you see clearly that Rabbi Meir holds that even on Shabbos they would make a separate maracha for a varim shenosru. Why do I need this chiddush of Bar Kapara? And the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Itztur. We need Bar Kapara to tell me that according to Rabbi Meir, they had a maracha for the Evarim shenosru even on Shabbos. Why? If not for Rabbi Ovid, I would have thought, Hani Mili, when does Rabbi Meir say in the Mishnah that they had 5 marachas on Yom Kippur? That's only Heichad Bechal Yom Kippurim Lios Acharat Shabbos, when Yom Kippur falls out on a Sunday. And then they set up a maracha for the Evarim Shenosru. Why? Because we have a principle that Chelvei Shabbos Kravim B'Yom Kippurim, that all the Evarim and the Chalavim and the Karbanos that were brought on Shabbos can be brought on Sunday of Yom Kippurim. And this is derived in the Gemara in Shabbos on Daf Kuf Yud Daled. Rabbi Shmuel there says that Chelvei Shabbos Kravim B'Yom Kippurim. And our Gemara here is a reflection of the Shita of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva disagrees over there in Shabbos. He holds that Chelvei Shabbos Einam Kravim B'Yom Kippur. But we're going here according to Rabbi Shmuel. Is therefore Avol B'Emtza Shabbos. If let's say Yom Kippurim was in the middle of the week, lo, there would not be 5 marachos. Because on Shabbos and Yom Kippurim, we're not going to set up a Maroch B'fnei Atzma, a separate pyre for every Karbana Shenosru Yom Chol. Because let's say Yom Kippur was on a Wednesday, so Tuesday would be a Yom Chol, and those Evarim of the Karbanos of Tuesday that were not burnt until Wednesday, but Wednesday's Yom Kippur, we're not going to burn them. And when does Rabbi Meir say that we add a 5th and on Yom Kippur we have that maracha bifnei atzma for every karbano shelo shenis osru if achsa ben aish? That's only from Shabbos to Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim was on a Sunday. Kamashman, this is what Bar Kappar is telling you. I feel big Shabbos. The Rabbi Meir holds that even on Shabbos and Yom Kippurim, we're going to set up a Maroch B'fnei Atzmo for the purpose of every Karbanos, Shehukruvu Bechol, and Nitotsu. Omar Rava, man haidlo chayish lekimche. This is an idiomatic expression, literally someone who grinds in a mill grain, and he doesn't bother to look and see, if there's something inside the grain that's mixed in that has to be removed. In other words, it's someone who speaks and there's not mamoshes, ein behem mamish, ludvar. Because from the fact that Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah says, v'hayom on Yom Kippur chamesh, there are 5 marachos, that would not prove that even on Shabbos we set up a maracha for Vorim Shenosru. And therefore this Lashon would not be difficult on Bar Kapara. So basically Rava is going to say, look, you quoted Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, a Havamina that we would, to justify the Chiddush of Bar Kapara, Havamina that we would have thought that in the Mishnah, the case of Yom Kippurim is Yom Kippurim liachar Shabbos. He says that's not a fair reading, a meticulous reading of the Mishnah. Why? Because ha bechol yom tnan. It says in the Mishnah bechol yom hayisham arba marachos, and the language of bechol yom means even on Shabbos. So therefore, we're back to asking our original kasha on Bar Kapara, what is he coming to be machadish to teach us? It says, by adding afilu b'Shabbos, it says in our Mishnah b'chol yom, which implies and includes Shabbos. Kasha. So the Gemara ends up with a kasha. It's not a tiyuvta, it's a kasha. And the Ritva says that Lo nifrachu legamri divrei Bar Kapara. They weren't. Bar Kapara was not completely rejected, because we could still say that when the Mishnah says b'chol yom, hainu shekeino yu osim b'chol yom yemos hachol, aval b'Shabbos lo yosim. Now the Gemara quotes an opinion that seems to reject Bar Kapara. Upliga de Rav Huna. Rav Huna rejects Bar Kapara and Rava, who said that the Ivarim of Karbonas Chol shenosru ad leboker shel Yom Shabbos, even yesterday, Friday's Karban, if there were parts of the Zevach, the Ivarim, that were not completely consumed, we can burn them on Shabbos. Rav Huna could not accept that. The Omar, Rav Huna said with regard to the Karban Tamid, the lasso, which means the Shchita and the Akrava, doches HaShabbos. So this means that the Tamid of Shabbos overrides the Shabbos. All Shabbos b'Shabbato means that the Shchita and the Akrava will take place on Shabbos. But Sofo, as far as the Avarim, if they were left over and they weren't burnt until the nighttime, is Eino Doches HaShabbos. So it means that if the Talmid shel Erev Shabbos, the Avarim were not burned completely until nighttime, and now it's Shabbos, we're not going to be makter the Avarim on Shabbos. Now there's a line here in the Masechet which I'm having trouble with. Let me read it to you, maybe we can work it out. He says, "V'chein Avarim shelo nisaklu balayla v'nosru ad haboker ein hakarosam docha Shabbos." Now, I'm not sure what he's trying to add over here. He already has established a simple shot that you had the Talmid shel Erev Shabbos. The Varim were not completely consumed until nighttime, which is Friday night, which is Shabbos, and we're not going to burn them on Shabbos because these are a Varim of yesterday, according to Rav Huna, which did not override the Shabbos. Not sure why he adds here a varm shalonis aklu balayla v'notzu ad boker. I mean, what's the difference between the night of Shabbos and the morning of Shabbos, following morning? I don't catch exactly what he's trying to say. In any event, when Rabbi Meir says in our Mishnah B'chol Yom, on a daily basis they had 4 marachos, it means that's B'chol Yom B'yamos HaChol. According to Rav Huna on Shabbos, they weren't makriv if they varm shalonis aklu because those don't override the Shabbos. Now, he writes here in the note that Afla bar kapor v'rova back hakrova say varm to ochsa ben h kodem Shabbos u'tru b'Shabbos. When bar kapora and Rov insist that there's a dechi of Shabbos with a varim shenosru, that's only because ochsa ben Shabbos ochsa ben or ha'h kodem Shabbos, and therefore when Rav Huna says that a varim shall tamid of Erev Shabbos is tamid, we have to be makrim them before Shabbos. In essence, he's not arguing against Bar Kapar and Rava because they concede that if lo achso b'na eish bevarim kodem Shabbos, then you're not allowed to be makriv him. But Rav Huda held that even in the case of evarim cha achsu b'na eish kodem Shabbos, also lakrivam b'Shabbos. And the Mishnah Lamelech in Hilchos Tvidim in Sofim Parak Aleph has a long discussion about this. Now later on, the Gemara is going to bring a machlokas, 2 opinions as to how to interpret Rav Huna. When the Gemara says Rav Huna is against Bar Kapar and Rava, that's according to Rabbah, who interprets Rav Huna. But Rav Chizda, who interprets Rav Huna doesn't disagree with Bar Kapar and Rava at all. Gufa, now the Gemara brings this machlokas about Rav Huna. Amar Rav Huna tamid chilaso docha sofo eina docha. This was the statement of Rav Huna. And until now, we were assuming, which again is going to be one opinion in interpreting Rav Huna, that Rav Huna is talking about the Chiyas Shabbos, and he disagrees with Bar Kapar and Rava in the case of Evarim Cha'achsa ben Eish Kodem Shabbos, and he holds also Lakrivim b'Shabbos. So that's going to be one interpretation of Rav Huna's words. Here's the actual quote of Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, as we saw earlier, Tamid chilasa docha sofo eno docha. What does this mean when he says sofo eno docha? So we're familiar with Rabbah, but the Gemara starts with Rav Chizda, so hang in there. Rav Chizda Amar, when Rav Huna says that Tamid Sofo Eno Doch, he's not referring to Shabbos, because Tamid Sofo Doches HaShabbos. In fact, Rav Huna would agree with Bar Kapar and Rava that if Achso ben Eish Kodem Shabbos, then we will allow burning the Evarim on Shabbos. That's of the Tamid of Friday. So what did Rav Huna actually target? What did he have in mind when he says Sofo Ein Docha? Ein Docha Satuma. We cannot override the Isa of Hakrava Betuma, and for the sake of the Evarim and the Murim of the Tamid, which are normally brought to Tumah, and that would be as far as Chilaso is concerned, but not as far as Sofo. And even though the rule is that every carbon that has a Kviyas Man, there's an urgency in time, it's Karev, we can bring it af Betuma. However, that's only Tchilasa, which means the Zrikas Adam. That could be implemented to Tumah. But Hakravas Murim and Evarim, that's already a secondary kiyum. That's not the critical essence of the Kapar Sakarbon, and therefore that will not override the Tumah. And this is the way Rav Chizda interprets the words of Rav Huna that chilaso means shchita and zrika, and that overrides the tumah. But sofo, when we're ready for the akrovas evarim, that's not dochet tumah. The second interpretation, which we've been operating with until we had the first of Rav Chizda, was Rabba. Rabba Omar, Rav Huna would agree sofa doches atuma, that even the evarim, if they are tmeim, we will dochet tumah. But ain't a doches hashabbos. The evarim of the Talmud of Erev Shabbos, if they were left over and they weren't completely burnt till the night, or if, as the Masechet says, they weren't burnt until the next morning, which I don't know why he has to add that, but anyway, Einam Dochen Mes Shabbos, they don't override the Shabbos, and therefore Tchilaso means the Shchita and the Zrikas Damo and the Hakrova Docha Shabbos, meaning if you have a Talmud on Shabbos itself, it's brought on Shabbos, but Sofo, which means the Hakrova Seivarim, is not Docha Shabbos, which means that if you have a Talmud of Erev Shabbos, although the Talmud of Shabbos itself is Docha Shabbos for sure, even as far as Hakrova say Murim are concerned, but if you're talking about a carbon Talmud of Erev Shabbos, we're not going to be makriv the Varim of that Talmud of Erev Shabbos on Shabbos. And that's called Sofo Eino Docha. Amalei Abaye l'Rabba, l'didach, according to your understanding of Rav Huna, Kasha, I have a question. Rav Chizda, Kasha. And even according to Rav Chizda, in his interpretation of Huna, have a Kasha. Why? Because both these dinim of Dechia Shabbos and Dechia Tumah are one and the same, meaning they come from the same source. You can't split them. You have to be consistent. L'didach Kasha. I have a Kasha on your Pshat, Rav Huna, Rabbah. Maishno, why do you tell me Tumah? That if you have a Varim, Shenosu, you're going to be makriv them b'tumah d'chsiv. You're going to derive that from the pasuk in the parish of Korban Tamid in Bamidbar Perek Chav Ches, where it says Tishmeru lakriv li b'moado, and we have a sugim psachim daf ayin zayin that we're going to be makriv the Tamid b'zmano afilu b'tumah, because the Torah says b'moado, it's time urgent, it's kavul zman, and that's going to teach you, according to you, Rabbah, that even the Varim Shenosu, that also could be brought b'tumah. Shabbos Nami. We should derive the same exact conclusion from the word b'moado with regard to Shabbos, that the Talmud is Docha Shabbos, and b'moado should teach me that we should be makriv the Talmud b'zmano afilu b'Shabbos. Ula Rav Chizda Kasha, and the same Kasha, just on the flip side, I'm going to ask Rav Chizda, Maishna Shabbos, that the Varim of yesterday's Karban, of the Talmud Shel Erev Shabbos, that were left over till Shabbos, Docha Shabbos, L'chsiv b'moado, is afilu b'Shabbos, is Tumanami. We should apply the same yardstick from b'moado to Tuma, that we should be makriv the Varim that weren't burnt, even if it means to burn them b'tumah. And just like Talmud is kared b'tumah, therefore b'moado should teach me that even the Evarim should be dochet tumah. Afilu b'tumah, we should be makriv the Torah b'zmano, afilu b'tumah. Amalei, so Rabbah responds to by loli di kasha, v'lola Rav Chizda kasha. And now Rabbah is going to defend both his own shita and Rav Chizda shita against the onslaught and the kind of mimanavshach of Abai.